Hello students, this is Rugen. We're going to cover JSON Web Tokens within secure cookies. And the reason we want to use secure cookies is a lot of tutorials online will teach you that you can use, local storage or session storage. But the idea behind putting in a secure cookie is your browser doesn't give your JavaScript any access to that cookie. So it means your JSON Web Token can be sent from your front end back to the back end for verification, but your client side, your front side, doesn't have access to that web token. So it keeps it all secure from scripting. It's not the end all and be all of security, but it's just one extra layer of security that gives us an advantage against any malicious code. And we're going to do that using Express, so let's get into it. We're going to need Express so that we can serve up some JSON through an API. So we're going to need an Express server. So to do that, we're going to make sure we get the right version of Node. The current version I'm using is 10.6. So you're going to need to have something around that version or higher. Of course, in time this may change, and so therefore this video will be out of date. Okay, so to start with, we want to make a directory somewhere. I'm going to go to my desktop, and then I'm going to create a folder, and that folder is going to be my project, my API. So I'm going to make an API that connects to a list of people. So we're going to have an accounts API, cd into accounts API, and here we want to create a few things. So to start with, I'm going to just start off with the default index.js. So that's going to be our initial JavaScript file, and we're just going to load that, and we're going to do npm init and hit the Y so that we can skip all the standard options. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to clear that out. So now that we have, if you have a look here, an index and a package.json, we can start adding some essential required things to our Node project. So if we want to, we can go npm add, and now we're going to add Express. This is going to go fetch that. And now we should have Express. So let's open that up in VS Code. It's going to open up the whole directory using the dot and the shortcut code. You can see here in our package.json, you should have dependency Express. Now to get this running every single time, over and over again, whenever we make a change to this index.js, I'm going to use nodemon, so npm add, and use the D for development only because we don't want to push this up as a production thing. So nodemon, run that. So if you look here now in our package.json under dev dependencies, you've got nodemon. So now over here in our scripts, we can create a start script that is going to run nodemon over index.js. So any changes we make to index.js, we're now going to have that update and reload it all. So let's get that started. So basically we're going to come back to this, save this, close it. In here we're going to say we now need to use Express to create a server. So let's use the standard way of doing that. So we're going to create a Express and import that from our Node modules, which should have been installed when you did the npm add. So require in Express. We're going to make an app, so const app equals Express, like so. So now we need to start her up, and we're going to have app.listen. I'm going to say which port. I'm going to make a variable up here, which is const port, and just do 3000. Read port here, and have a callback function that is going to run after that is running. Let's put that another line there. And so inside that callback, I'm going to console.info, put some backticks and say listening on port, and then string interpolate that variable port there. So if I ever change that port variables to say 3001 or 4000, then this is going to update straight away as well. So let's get that running. npm start, and you can see here it's listening on port 3000. So Say we have a bunch of users and just present it as some JSON. So I'm going to create instead of creating a model, I'm just going to create some temporary data here called users.json. So I'm going to have an array of objects in here, which are going to be each user. So I'm going to create an ID for each user. And put that there. It's user 1, 2, and 3. Duplicate that. And change it to 3 users. Also on each one of these, probably going to create a first name. Just going to put in Sally, John, and Bob. So I've got 3 people there. We've got an ID for each of them, which is a unique identification, and then a first name for each of them. That's about as far as I want to go for this. So we're just going to save that as some JSON, and then we can import that to our application. So using Node, this is a synchronous action. So we're going to go with users equals requiring something that's local, which is users.json. And I'm also going to just move that to the top there. Okay, so when somebody goes to my route/users, I'm going to have a request and a response. Whoops. And in there, I'm going to take a response and say I'm going to send back some JSON with all the users inside of that. So let's test that out. So if we now open up our browser and hit the route localhost 3000/users, you can see here we get our JSON, which is working as we expect it to. Now, part of what we're doing here is we want to say, all right, the only way you can see this route is if you have a valid JWT, and we want it sent through as a cookie, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's do it. Instead of using our browser, we're actually going to use something which is an extension, which is going to allow us to do HTTP requests. So this is it. This is the one you want. So install this. We've got a REST client here. So we can imitate what the browser is going to do. And this way we can do posts as well as gets. So once you've installed it, reload, and you should have this tool available as an extension. So going back to our folder directory, I'm going to create a new file there, and I'm going to call it users.http. And we can do now we can type in get, and then http localhost 3000/users, and if we click this here, this send request, we should receive our JSON plus all the headers that come with it and a nice 200 OK. So everything's working as it should. However, before we hit this route, we should be checking whether they have a valid JWT, and we should receive their token and so on. So how do we go about that? Okay, so what we need to have is some middleware that's obviously going to check whether this token is here, and also whether or not we're creating the cookie. So part of that process, we're going to create a login. If you want to create a register, you can do the same thing. We're just going to create a login here, and we're going to assume that we have in the database already a valid login. So I'm going to do app.use. And I might change this to be /login. And before I do that, I'm going to actually have auth. It's going to be /auth/login. We're going to also have a request and a response. And we're going to take information from the front end, and the front end meaning the browser, and then we're going to check that information, and if the information received is valid, like it's a valid user, then we're going to give back a response and a cookie. So to do that, we're going to need to do a few things. We're going to need to use a parser. So Express now has a built-in body parser. So we're going to use the top here before everything, use.express.json, and that's going to take any JSON that's posted to us and put that into rec.body. So to have a look at that, we're going to go and say we want an email from the rec.body, and we want a password from the rec.body. This might not make sense at the moment, but we're going to explain it in a minute. So when somebody wants to log in, they're going to have to send me their email and their password, and they're going to have to send it as JSON, and I'm going to receive that inside the body because I've done this bit of line of code here. So now that I'm going to get that, I have to imitate that I'm sending that, and we'll just send back a response with what we've actually sent. So what I'm going to send back is what they've sent to me. And this is what we wouldn't do normally, but we're just going to show you as an example. So now I go back to this, and we make another one here, which is I'm going to create a new file called auth.http, and we're going to say this is going to be a post, HTTP localhost 3000 auth and login. Okay, so what are we going to do? Well, we're actually going to send some JSON. Now, on your browser, you'd use some JavaScript to do this, but for this, we actually just get to type it in straight away, and it's going to work. We do need to specify the content type. It's going to be application JSON, and leave space here, and here's where you can actually write in some JSON. So I'm going to put in here email, and we're going to put in rugen@example.com. And then we're going to go through and add a password. Oop. Green eggs and ham. That's a terrible password, but that's the one I'm going to go with for now. Okay, so just to test this out, remember everything should be updating because of NodeMon. So once we've added all the code to this, it should have restarted, which you should have seen in the background happening. And so this should work. So the only thing we're missing here is, because we're trying to do a post, we need to receive this as a post. So we're going to say, instead of app.use, we're going to say app.post. So let's try this out. Actually have to put in the status as well. So I'm going to status is going to be 200. I'm also going to add that straight to here. So it just says that we actually specify what status it's going to be before we send out the JSON. So if we try that one more time. Okay, so one of the things we're going to have to do here is add that as an object, and that should fix that straight away. Let's try that out one last time. And there we go. Okay, so not the result I kind of wanted. Okay, so why is that happening? So we actually have to specify what we want to get out of that, and that's the password over here and the password, the email here. So let's make sure we've got that. Now if we try that one more time, yeah, we get it the way we want. So that's the email here and the password. So that's what we were sent here, and that's what we received, and that's actually what we sent back. But we don't want to send back this. We want to just send back a 200. So let's change this to be a end. Let's try that out in the auth. So we got a 200, okay, but we didn't receive a cookie. Okay, so first things first, we're going to pretend that we actually have a verification system. So we're going to go if email is not equal to, we're going to add example.com, or password is not equal to green eggs and ham. And just so that we can see this, I'm going to do this over 2 lines. We're going to throw a new error. Simply say password account information incorrect. Not valid. Okay, so if at any point in time the password and email doesn't verify, we're just going to throw this. Now, obviously, we'd have a proper model which would check the password in the database, and it would hash the password, and it would check the hashed password with what's in the hash password in the database, and then we would get this verification. But we're just going to imitate that using this simple if statement. So I'm just going to hide most of this code if I can. Now let's just test this. See, we're still getting a 200 OK. That's great. Obviously, if we throw an error, that's not going to be that. So we're actually going to change the response to be a status. I'm going to do 400. So that'll mean that when we throw the error to the Express error handler, it'll say status is 400 and not be the correct thing. And this is what the error will get passed through to it. Otherwise, we're going to keep moving along. And we'll presume that this has all worked fine. And so we're going to say, right, now we're going to create a cookie. It's going to be access token. We're going to have some sort of token here. I'm just going to put in token as 123. Obviously, we'll replace this token with a JWT later on. And we're going to just check whether this works. So I'm going to go over here and do this again. And you can see here we've got a set cookie with the access token and our actual token here. So this is exactly the kind of thing we want to have. We want to show that we've got a cookie that's being set, and our browser will pick up this instruction here and go, okay, I'm going to make a cookie with and then set that in the browser so that we can use that cookie. Let's use JWTs. So in order to do that, we're going to need to install JWT. So I'm going to open up another tab, and with that new tab, I'm going to npm add JSON web token. So at the very top, I'm going to import JSON web token as JSON web token JWT. And we'll fire it in as JSON web token. And now over here, I'm going to create a token. So to create a token, I'm going to assign a new token. And so this takes a few options. So if you look at sign, it takes a payload, and then it takes a secret. Now the secret you need to keep secret, so you probably use it as an environment variable and all that. I'm not going to do environment variables in this demo, so you're going to have to look up how to do that. But in this one, I'm just going to create up the top here a const that is the secret, and this should be secret. It should never be sent to the client or anybody using your website. It's only for the backend, which is the API server. So I'm just going to put in a simple secret, which is just obviously you want to have a better secret than that. So we're going to put that secret as here. Now the payload, we're going to have to create a payload here. Now payload generally don't want to put sensitive information in there. So you may want to put the ID in there if it's not sensitive for your front end to know about your ID from your database. You could also put in the email of the person, so that way that's something that you could put in there. So I'm just going to pop in the payload, the actual email that was given to us by the user. So the payload is going to have an email, which is going to be email. It's going to be made into the token. And then we're actually going to say, okay, this is now going to be a token. Okay, so once we've done that, if we test this out again, you can see here now we have a JWT as the access token. Now there's a few other things we can add to this, so we can simply go in here and add a options. So these are the cookie options. So you use an object here, and inside we need a key, which is going to be the max age property. And here you can put in seconds how long this cookie is going to last. So obviously if we want to have an hour, so you can go and use something like a tool, hours as seconds. And DuckDuckGo has something like this. So you can say if I want it to be 1 hour, it's 3,600 seconds. So max age, it goes in seconds. So we just paste in that like so. Now there are some security measures you can do, which we are going to use. HTTP only, we're going to set that to true. And if you're using in production, you would probably want to have secure as true. But since we're using HTTP, we're just going to comment that out for now. So you would uncomment that in production, as long as you've got all the HTTPS stuff set up. HTTP only means that when we set the cookie on the browser side, the JavaScript doesn't have access to your cookie. So that means that your cookie is nice and safe. You can't have a script that steals the cookie and then uses it for malicious reasons. So once you have that, we can go and check this again. And you can see here we're still setting the cookie, but this time we've got an expiry date. This is the date that I'm recording this, plus an hour. And we've also got HTTP only to tell the browser that when it creates the cookie, don't make it available to the user. So basically, no one can write a script that can steal it. So that's the auth login sort of side of things. That's allowing us to verify the user. We're using a very poorly written script here. Obviously, you want to use something better, like a model that would check in a database the password, and it'll be hashed and so forth. And then we're taking a payload from that email that we received once that's been verified and okay. And we're going to make a token and then set that to a cookie and then send back an okay response of 200. And we don't need to send anything back. We just have all the information we need in the cookie. So when the browser holds onto the cookie, we can send that cookie back to the backend, and we can actually go in and have a look at that cookie when we need it. So to get the cookie, we're going to need to parse the cookie once we receive it, read the token, and then verify the token. If the verified token is there, we're going to say, yep, you can look at users. Actually might change this to API/users because we want to say this is part of our API. That way we can stop a person from visiting our website if they don't have a valid cookie. And that means they won't have a valid login either. In order to do any of that, we're going to need to have a cookie parser. So we're going to need to add that. So npm add cookie parser. And I'm going to bring in cookie parser. So I now have cookie parser. So now I can do app.use, much like I did Express.js. I'm going to say cookie parser. Run that. So let's get that cookie. So once we have a cookie, rect.cookie, rect.cookies, and then we're going to get access token out of those cookies. So that's the particular cookie that we created. If you have a look here, we had access token. That was the key or the name of the cookie. Then we had the actual information about the cookie, which is stored as the value, which is token. So let's just hide that for now. So what we're going to do is say we're going to access that and save that to a variable called token. And we're going to test this. So we're going to basically say we're going to use JWT to verify the value. So the JWT will be in this token. So we're going to do const decoded equals JWT.verify and pass in the token, plus we're also going to pass in the secret. So that's going to verify the token with the secret, and if it decodes without throwing an error, we'll get back that decoded thing there. That's going to be the payload inside there, and we can even pass back that payload if we want, but we just want to check whether that happens, and if this breaks, it'll throw an error, in which case we can set the status and so on. Let's try this out. So if we go to users and we try and get our information, we get back some, nope, it's not going to work. That's not quite what we want. We actually want to get that sort of stuff. So if we go back to this and we log in correctly, we get this access token and so on and so on. So we can copy and paste that there. Come back to this. And I'm just going to put a comment above this. I'm going to say this is without a valid cookie. So I'm going to say as a comment, without valid cookie. And then I'm going to say with the valid cookie. And I'll just separate this through these. And I'm going to say get me the users. And also we're going to have to change this to API. So that wouldn't have worked anyway. So we've because we didn't have that. So we'll just double check that that's still, yep, JSON Web Token must be provided. We haven't received that, so that's actually what we wanted to have. We wanted to have this here. So with a valid cookie, we're going to localhost 3000 API users, but this time we're going to say we've got a cookie, and we're going to paste that right there. So that whole long cookie that we copied from that before, route response, we're going to do that. Now we're going to try it out. Oh, made a mistake. Don't want it to be HTTPS. We just want it to be HTTP because we're not on HTTPS. So send request, and now we get all our information. So you can see here that everything is the way we want it, and we're receiving all the information as we want. Now, the thing we have to note about this is that none of this deals with cause, and because our front end might be in Vue.js, our browser is going to throw a cause error. So we actually need to add cause to this and say what our front end is. So in order to do this correctly, we're going to need cause added to our app, and also set some settings, and then everything should work as it should. So to get that happening, we're going to go jump back to our thing, and we're going to use a tool called cause. So rather than do this manually, we'll add another package called cause. Let that install, and come back here and add cause. And over here, we're going to app.cause, app.use cause, and we're going to pass in a few options. So the first one is to say the origin, which is going to be HTTP localhost. Now it's going to be a different one. So if you're on 3000 and your back end, your front end should be a different one. So I'm going to say 3001. That's going to be the difference. Don't add this final slash here for some reason. That didn't work for me when I did that, so just make sure you do that. If you're running on HTTPS, of course, then you would say that there too as well. And then also another thing we're going to have to say is credentials true. So that's going to be for our cookie and so on. So now, just one more time, we'll just test that out and say with a valid cookie, without a valid cookie, we get a JSON Web Token. Of course, you don't want to get this HTML. You would rather get something more JSON-like. You can go down and create an error handler, which will be the one down here. So we're going to get app.use response and next. Now we're not going to use the next or the response, but I'm just putting it there anyway, so you can see this is the catch-all error handler. So now that we've got an error handle, an error. We're going to send a response with some JSON, and it's going to be the error. So we can set up a status, but generally you want to probably set that up yourself. If this doesn't work, for example, I could put a try block around that, try and decode this. If it does throw an error, then we'll be able to catch that error. So I'm going to say try this, catch the error, throw the error. But before we do that, set the status to say something like a 400. So just say, that's probably not the best code to use for this, but I'm just using it as an example. And sorry, I'm going to just correct that. It's a response.status. And therefore, I don't have to put it in the catch-all. Now, you could put in the catch-all the 500 if there is not a status. Let's try it out. So we get here the name in the message, JSON Web Token, and it's as JSON. So our error has been handled there as JSON. And we go one more time, try that. We can see there that that's working fine as well. So that's the first half. I am going to do a tutorial on the front end and how to handle using Axios, the cookie, sending it back so that you can respond. But this is the back end. So just getting this to work is probably where you want it to happen. And you can turn this into middleware very easily. I'll do that in the next video so that you can use it on any route, not just this route, but rather than typing this over and over again, you just make it some Express middleware and then use it there. And then that way you don't have to do this every single time.